Hi guys, my name is Tyler Beckley and welcome to Barbells and Black Belts. This month's guest will be Lieutenant General Michael Ferriter from the United States military. General Ferriter is a 3-star general in the Army. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he is also considered the godfather of the modern-day Army Combative system. Thank you for watching the podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and follow us on social media for more. Thanks again and hope you enjoy the podcast. Hi guys, welcome to episode 5 of Barbells and Black Belts. My name is Tyler Beckley, and today on the show, a very special guest in Lieutenant General Michael Ferriter from the United States Army is going to be coming in and talking to me today. And I'm going to lead it off right away. I'm really excited. We've been talking in the pre-show quite a bit, but Lieutenant General Ferriter, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for seeing me, and yeah, I'm just going to lead this off with telling us a little bit about your background, sir, and how we could come to find each other and know each other and be talking. So,
yeah, well, thanks, Tyler. It's great to be with you, and great to be with all of those folks that take time to listen to the kind of things that you bring to the public and bring. But I grew up in a military family. My dad was a colonel. When he retired, he fought in World War II, and we went out to California, and I played basketball and baseball. I had a chance to play baseball at University of California, Santa Barbara. And my dad said, hey, take a look at this military school in South Carolina. And I said, Dad, they all shave their heads and, high in tights. And I could be down at the beach in Santa Barbara. And he said, just take a look at this school. And it turned out that he and the president of the school had served together. It was a military school called the Citadel. And I ended up there, and I loved it. And he knew me well enough to know that I would. And then I was commissioned out of there, meaning I came out and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry of the U.S. Army. And that started a 35-year career. And in that time, I probably moved 18 times growing up. And then I probably moved my family another 25 times or so. And so it's always a chance, sort of like athletes growing up, you got to try out for the team the next year. If you move a town or move a school, you got to try out again. And I think that really made a perfect match for I like people. I like the opportunity to grow. And eventually that led to me being in the Army as a paratrooper and part of the elite Army Rangers, and over 200 parachute jumps. I had 4 combat tours. I had Mogadishu, Somalia in 1993. They made a movie called Black Hawk Down. I arrived on day 2 or 3 after that big fight. I always want to give that disclaimer. But I watched those Rangers train, and I knew they could fight and win. And then I had 3 combat tours in Iraq. And then I retired in 2014 and eventually was asked to be the founding president and CEO of the National Veterans Memorial Museum here in Columbus, Ohio, and ran that for 6 years and then retired from that. Along the way, I picked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But as a backdrop, married to Margie since September 3rd, 1979, 4 awesome kids, 8 awesome grandkids, and 1,000 plus great friends, including my new friend, Tyler.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, that's amazing when I was looking into your background. And my friend who's sitting over here with us, too, I want to mention him, Rich Tepe, that helped set this one up, too. Rich is one of my black belts and one of my great friends that has introduced me to General Ferriter. And this was when the first time we got the opportunity to meet was we did the Jimmy Pedro seminar over at the museum, and I got to go in, and you kind of gave us a little bit of a tour before the seminar, a little bit. Beautiful place too, and the beautiful gym that it was there. We'll get into a little bit later, I guess. but it was just such a great community, and it just extended a little bit more into the growing community that we have with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too. And now, getting the opportunity, I always tell my wife that as well. Jiu-Jitsu is so easy to connect people, and and really you have so many things that are like very common in what we were talking about on the pre-show too, sir. In jiu-jitsu and some of the connectivity as well. And before we even go any further too, I wanted to say this at the beginning and I didn't. Thank you to Robin Geisler as well in his beautiful Gracie, Ohio gym here too.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, this facility is amazing too. So Robin, I hope you watch this one, and thank you very much to Robin Geisler on that one. So my next question too, sir, that we're getting into as well is, we were talking a little bit during the pre-show. You were telling us a little bit of the stories about how the Army Combatives first started too. And if you could give the listeners a little bit of history on Army Combatives and how it kind of got started, sir.
Sure, I'd love to. In 1998, I was the commander of 3rd Ranger Battalion. And a part of being an Army Ranger is that in the Abrams Charter, it says that the Rangers will be the best soldiers in the Army, and they will be the best fighters, and they can do more with their weapons and with their hands than any others. And we looked at that and said, we really can't do more with our hands. And so then Colonel McChrystal, Stanley McChrystal, my boss, noticed that a family out of California was winning this new thing. This new thing was called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so, being curious, we wondered why was Hoist Gracie winning against giant men? And so we sent a couple of NCOs to figure that out. Matt Larson was one of the originals, and we found out that they told us Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is the most effective fighting style or art, and that's what they were doing. So about 2 months later, Colonel McChrystal asked me, Colonel Ferriter, how do you feel about bringing Hoist and Hori and Gracie to 3rd Ranger Battalion to train your sergeants, your NCOs? And I said, well, sir, what's that going to cost? He said, well, it's about $40,000. I said, well, sir, I don't even have night scopes on all of my machine guns. We're literally back in that day. So I'd rather take that money and apply it for night scopes. And he said, good, I'm glad I know how you feel about it. I didn't ask you to approve it, so do it. So next thing I know, Horian and Hoist are in my Ranger dining facility. I met them, and we trained our sergeants, and that started the journey. And then, as luck would have it, and as the Lord might make it so, I was assigned to the Army Training Command, not to the Rangers as a colonel, but to the Army Training Command. And I got called up to the commanding general's headquarters. He said, I want you to rewrite the basic training course. Our officers are too soft, and I want you to scuff them up. And I said, sir, I'm an Army Ranger. We get paid to scuff things up, so glad to do that. But I really saw the opportunity not just to make it that every officer, as they came into the Army, walked with a heavy rucksack and fired their weapons and slept on the ground and got to know what it was like to be cold or hot or sweaty. But also I saw that, I can take what I've learned from the Rangers and from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and bring it over to the whole Army. And so we were given a couple weeks to write the program for the new officer training, and I put Army Combatives in there, and they said, well, what's that? I said, it's hand-to-hand fighting. They said, well, you don't have lesson 1 to 20 written up. I said, okay. So we wrote up, Matt Larson, Troy Thomas, myself, and 1 or 2 others, lesson 1 to 20. And we drew on Horian, we drew on Romero Jacare, Cavalcante out of Atlanta. And then they said, well, you don't have any mats. So we got the mats on a life cycle replacement from a local high school. They said, we don't have a facility. So we traded to get the book warehouse and lay the mats down. And they said, well, you don't have the field manual talks about the Fairbairn knife and the British commandos. It doesn't talk about ground fighting, and it doesn't talk about jiu-jitsu. It doesn't talk about what a soldier should do today. And so we rewrote the manual. So that was the beginning, and that was 99. And within a couple of years, we had our first Army Combatives tournament. And this week, we had our 25th.
Yeah, you were showing me the pictures.
It was amazing. So
big success.
So it's a real credit to the sergeants over that time who said, we're going to keep this program alive because it works. And so many instances of someone in Iraq or Afghanistan being in a situation where what they had learned saved their life and or won the day. So I set it up, Combatives, and then I said, I'm going to play 3-on-3 basketball or racquetball. And my sergeant said, hey, sir, you got to step on the mats, and you got to show by example that you can learn this. And so if an old colonel could learn it, then everyone could.
And what age did you start doing jiu-jitsu, sir?
It would have been probably 44 years old.
Wow. Like, that's a common question I commonly get, like, am I too old for this kind of stuff? And no, you're not.
You can do it, and you should. More than can you should, because it will change your life. So then after, in the summer, early spring of 2014, this shortstop and point guard was promoted to or graduated to black belt under Jacare, and knew at that moment there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
It's not, that was just the beginning. That's the real step off. But, and then you think about the fact that we were able to establish it and then let it grow and flourish, and then continue to see how those men and women that learned in the Army now are out in communities taking care of our kids and other people.
I guess to start off, a couple of questions I had, like the 1 through 20 kind of points that you originally did too. I mean, that's great. It sounds exactly how, honestly, I built my jiu-jitsu academy. It's like, well, we don't have a space. We don't have mats, right? And you just, hey, have a problem, go solve it, How did that look to kind of start out too? Like a big emphasis on anything with the gi, or how was that, sir?
In fact, just so what we had to do is ensure that it could be understood that there's a direct link to what they're doing and what they would have to do in combat. And so the lethality side of it, or the functional common sense that it works. So in fact, the first number of years, you wouldn't see a gi. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't see a cage, even if it was in the academy, because you didn't want those doubters to say, "Oh, it's just sport jiu-jitsu, or it's just some kind of kung fu stuff." So most of those, so the training is done in your battle dress uniform or your equivalent of your fatigues, your field uniform, and then you might even put the kit or the battle rattle on. Or you might do it in a shoot house, and as you clear one room and clear the other, then opposing forces there. So we really tried to make it that way, all the while not missing the fact that the fundamentals is what's going to make it work. So you had to be on the mats, you had to take them through the progression to understand body positions and understand finishing and understand defending. And so it's really touchy. That's why I'm so proud of those sergeants that carried the day. I'm often called the Godfather of Army Combatives, and my friend Matt Larson is the father. But when someone messes with the program, the Godfather shows up and says, you got a lot of rank probably, or you're a senior sergeant major. Here's what you probably don't understand. Let me help you understand it for real, because it's gonna make a difference.
I feel like it's the evolution, just hearing as I've came up through mixed martial arts first. I was a professional fighter, and I turned pro in 2009, and one of the big voices back then was Tim Kennedy. And Tim was like, the words he was saying are the words I knew were true because I fought inside of a cage and stuff. And some of the things that Tim was saying, it's like he became a voice that could have a little bit of that credibility to say too. He's like, not only was he a Green Beret, but he was also a professional cage fighter. And, a lot more people started listening, and I'm glad too. It felt like the combative system maybe before in the 90s and stuff. You could speak to that a little bit more to that. Like, it needed refreshing and it needed updating a little bit. And with the introduction of jiu-jitsu into that, it seems that's been a big change, not only to how things are run on the, like, I guess what I say on the basic level, like where they start to teach jiu-jitsu very early. Am I correct in that one, sir?
You are, yeah. So for every soldier, when they go through their basic training, then they'll get 20 hours at least in that. And then as you go to your unit, you'll have certified instructors, level 2 or 3 instructors who kind of make sure the program's running. But back in the 80s, if you were waiting for your turn to go to the live fire range, you're probably throwing a knife against a tree. Yeah, just killing time. But you get into the late 90s and the 2000s, and then the sergeant's going to say, Jones, Smith, fight, and so they're in the pine straw of North Carolina, or clay of Georgia, or you name it, and they're practicing, they're learning to how to fight, how to get better at fighting, and then and so there's just so much application. And get up, dust yourself off, put your gear back on, get ready to go shoot, and we saw that a lot, and also we see it in the forward operating bases and stuff like that. Instead of watching one more movie or one more video game, you'd see
much more production. Yes, you're exactly right, sir. I guess this would be leading me to my next point too, about the combative system and how I believe in jiu-jitsu so much. When I came from the professional fighting standpoint, I listened to guys like Manny Pacquiao talk about when he does a lot of hard sparring, it's like that's taking a lot of damage. And so over time, you learned how to train better and learn that I'm still training, but I'm not training like where I'm beating up my body. And your ego is another part of that as well. And so me personally, I would say that for anybody going into some kind of fit, or anybody actually in this case, that jiu-jitsu has that effect where you can train because, sir, just like I do, to get a black belt, like I tell my kids, students, that I just had to get tapped a whole bunch more than they did. So you trained and you fought and you had to go through that fight or flight, and that ego got beat out of you so much that I think that personally is the best thing for anybody, especially maybe a soldier, in that regard too. Not only just the techniques that obviously if you grapple with a black belt, it's like you're going to have some problems, but just that person that's been through a lot of battles, and those battles aren't enough to, you see what I mean, to lasting injuries. We can still train on these mats when, how old are you too, sir?
68.
And still out there training, and it's like maybe not getting thrown by Jimmy Pedro, 50 times every single day, but it's like when you get out there, you just get kind of sharpened by those battles over and over again, and especially when it's in a mode that you can do it repetitively, So throwing knives against the tree, cool, but it's like if you were out there, you could really be getting some good training in there. Yeah. What was the other thing that the need was first just as a hand-to-hand aspect. So what else do you think that was the really good shapings from the Army Combative system?
Yeah, I think probably the best question that you could ask, and that is, we want someone in life. So whether you serve in the military or never served, to say this is tough, but I've seen tough, and I've navigated tough, and I've destroyed tough. I'll get through this. And so that in today's youth, this jiu-jitsu and combatives, it really allows them to face uncertainty and to face a tough situation and move forward. And I was down at the Army Combatives tournament this week, I mentioned to you, and I told him we never want a soldier to look over his shoulder and say, hey, Sergeant, there's a bad guy in front of me. The impulse has to be move towards the problem and solve it. And then whether it's in business or whether in your family life or whether on the mats, we have to move towards the problem and create a solution. And we also have to be best in the world at rejecting rejection. So when this doesn't work, it's not like I tried, so now I can quit. No, I tried. But jiu-jitsu teaches you,
don't stop there.
When a door slams, a window opens, and on and on. If they lean this way, you sweep them, or this way, they get swept, or you do nothing and let them create the space for you, and then you escape. But I think, between the years, the self-confidence, the young women saying, stop right there, take 2 steps back, leave me alone. There's so much value in it that goes way beyond the technique that helps them get the confidence, but the technique is really just part of the vehicle that helps them know that they can stand up for themselves for the rest of their life.
I explain it. I have a 14-year-old daughter, sir, and I explain it in a way of somebody might try to put a hand on her, and she's like, no, thank you. Like, you can take your hand away. It's like jiu-jitsu kind of builds that because you've had someone trying to choke you before, and you're like, I better do something about that. You learn that self-sufficiency. Like, I love the way you put it. Hey, I got a bad guy in front of me. It's like, that's your job. There's an immediate danger right now, and it's like, people see it as so different. I know we make jokes about it being pajama wrestling and stuff too, but in a very serious way, especially in the competition mindset too, like, laughing matter, like someone's trying to choke you and you need to do something about it. So being able to train that over and over and over, and especially that's why I'm a big believer in jiu-jitsu with young kids too. It starts to teach them that, like, hey, you have a hand in this, you can do something about this, and so, yeah, I'm glad that it has become more into that mainstream system where people are seeing this as a, more of a shaping of character as well, and
very well said. Yeah,
life
absolutely.
skills.
Absolutely, and this whole mention of the word ego, we like to say ego is no amigo, and so when you first step towards the mats, you mentally have to, or verbally have to say, ego, stay here, and then go out and see what you can learn. Or else you're going to find yourself, you can paint yourself quickly into a corner of doing nothing, because if you do something, it might not work. And whenever I roll with someone for the first time, I let them tap me, I let them tap me, I let them tap me. I say, okay, go home and tell everyone you tapped a black belt 3 times in 2 minutes. Now, would you like to roll and learn something? And then you can feel that they're relaxed, their ego is relaxed, and then they're going to learn 10 times more, as you well know.
It's just to ask a lieutenant general from the Army about ego, tell us what you think about ego. I mean, I always say it to some of the football coaches or something, like, you've got the sign up on the door, but you really need to know what it means too. So what do you think, sir, your definition of ego?
Yeah, I think, ego is dangerous, and self-confidence is safe and strong. And I think they're at different ends and can be, you can have this bravado and this self-confidence, but when it becomes about you instead of about what you can do for others, or you can do because it's your role on a team, the ego gets in the way.
I tell people sometimes it's about whatever the mission is, and that could be in a military sense or just in a business sense. And if you make it about you, then you're, to take a pro wrestling term, it's my guilty pleasure, sir, pro wrestling, but they say it's going into business for yourself. Or in a very easy way to understand it to someone who doesn't do jiu-jitsu, it's a good way to get your arm broke too. It's like tap out. You cannot have that ego. As you know, sir, we've probably seen a couple of people with their legs up in the air after they didn't tap out. And it's like, jiu-jitsu teaches you real quick that you're wrong. You're like, you're wrong, and this is how I showed you that you're wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
It's a way that jiu-jitsu kind of beats the ego out of us, because in my opinion, I feel like jiu-jitsu made me go look for more answers. I'm like, okay, then why am I getting hit with this? Okay, I need to go listen to this guy. He's doing this arm bar good, or whatever that is. Or what you said in the 90s when they said, why why is this discipline winning? Why we have to go figure this out? I mean, I feel like just like in science, we always look for the better solution and the better answer all the time.
And when you're training, if you don't push to a point of your own failure, if you don't explore to a point of your own failure, you're limiting your growth.
Yes, sir.
Or some say, if you only go to a point where you can win, then that's an exercise. But if you go to a point where you may not win or you may not have the outcome, but you'll have an outcome, that's an experiment. And when we get on the mats, we want to exercise with precision, but we want to experiment every time.
Yeah. It's to people that don't do jiu-jitsu that might listen, I mean, I'll put it in terms like what I tell my kids. Don't play your A game all the time. I'm like, go play your B game. Or when we do repetition drills from like when we start them in a spot, I'm like, cool, your knee cut pass doesn't work that way. Why don't you try that way? Try to do them different directions and things. And it's like, if you know the outcome is going to be you winning all the time, like you said, you're not training anymore. You're just kind of repping it now. Because the possibility of failure wasn't really there. Like, you need to get shut down because that's what shows you.
I saw one of the instructors at the Combatives tournament this week lose in an early match. And I went over and talked to him, and I said, you're spending all your time teaching, class number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to get, I've seen this so many times, you're going to get comfortable, but you're not rolling against the tough guys because it's so much fun to stay here in the comfort zone. And I had, even over the years, one of my best friends and great trainers of me, Tahan Nicholson. If he spent too much time training me, when he'd go back into the deep water, it would take him a couple days to realize, because General Fair's never going to put me in this bad place, because I'm teaching him and all that. So I think it all ties to, you got to extend yourself in life, and you got to extend yourself on the mats, and you got to be super curious all the time. And even Robin was finishing up a match, and I said, tell me about this, which way you would do X in a guillotine. He said, well, I like this. And he said, I know so-and-so does this, but I'm not there yet, so I don't want to tell you how to do that. But it was that discussion that I thought, here he is, saying, I don't have that down yet. Was that an admission of in a comfortable ego, which it was, saying,
sounds like
yes. Yeah, But he'll say, I'm going to make 2 calls, and next time I see you, I'm going to have the answer.
Bernardo Faria, a big quote that I took from him in my own personal coaching and just personal philosophy, I kind of added it in. He said, it's not my job to teach you Bernardo's jiu-jitsu, it's my job to teach you jiu-jitsu. And those can be 2 completely different things. Some games I play really well. I'm big shield guy. I came from the Salo and Sanji Hibero, so I play a lot of shield guard. I like simple close guard stuff. My professor, George Breeder in Toronto, big close guard guy. He said, I'm going to armbar this side. That's what I do real well. But George will show you, reverse De La Hiva into a saddle guard, into, Baron Bolo, things like that too. Like George's expansive knowledge of jiu-jitsu is vast, very vast.
Sure.
But, he'll be the first one to tell you that I do close guard really well. That's my jiu-jitsu too. But to your point too, that you always have to be curious on things. I find jiu-jitsu is also a really good method of keeping that mindset. My friend Kyle that came on my podcast, he's a doctor at the University of Findlay in psychology. He does child psychology. He's one of my good friends, and we just call it the child mind. Like, where you look at little kids and they don't care. They're just asking questions. Like you were telling stories about your granddaughter and stuff. Like, they just say the literal thing and ask the question.
Yeah.
And, there's a limit to that sometimes in the jiu-jitsu room, but most times it's like, ask the question. If you're having difficulty with finishing a submission or getting hit with it, ask the question, and it has that mindset to keep going on that too, and which I think is completely healthy in all forms.
It was funny. This week I was teaching class, and it was just a cross collar choke from the guard, and And he was saying, I can't get my hand in there. It's too tight. I said, well, just push this hand forward. And then you have this collar's loose. And he went, wow. And then at the end, I'll ask often in class, what'd you learn today? What'd you learn? And he said, I learned instead of pulling the collar and trying to get a choke somehow, I could just move it and then finish. But he asked the question. He could have just said, no one knows. I'm really not getting this choke. So I think we as leaders have to work to create the environment that they're comfortable as well to ask, to be curious. And I think that's the culture you set in your place.
Yes,
is
very
like,
much so.
This is exactly, if you're not asking a question, then I can't help you as much as that I want to. And sometimes they don't, people go around. And I would tell anyone, if you're going to a place and you're getting beat up, you're the customer and you're paying. So don't get beat up. Go find his place or a place that the culture is one where they're invested in you. You're the project that we want to be able to someone call you and say, hey, I saw one of your guys. He came and visited, and man, his jiu-jitsu was really good. And then with that kind of approach to developing people, then they're going to be out there in the workplace, they're going to be in neighborhoods, they're going to be helping kids themselves, and that's the the third thing that jiu-jitsu does for all of America is it sends leaders that want to help people out there in the communities.
Thank you for that too. I mean, yes, fantastic. I feel like, as we were talking pre-show, my big thing on starting the podcast is not only to have great conversations with people, but I really want to expand jiu-jitsu out more and talk about how it can help people too. And the other topic that's next on my list was to go into what jiu-jitsu can do for veterans and what you guys were doing at the Veterans Museum before, because I feel like jiu-jitsu checks so many boxes if it's done in the right way too, because as you mentioned before, the culture is obviously the shaping. We were talking pre-show about in 5 minutes going in and you're in a kind of gym, where everyone beats their chest and who's the alpha and things like that. It's that it can be not productive, but I'd say 99% of the places I've went in this country and that Rich travels all around the world, that they're very healthy environments to grow and learn in jiu-jitsu. I think jiu-jitsu overall has a really good culture around being not only more confident, more self-aware, more present-minded, and just a really big stress relief for a lot of people too, as well as exercise and some of the obvious things that jiu-jitsu can bring. But I guess next on my list was talking about just the things that it can bring to veterans as well that we were talking about, sir, if you'd like to talk about that.
I'd love to, yeah. So the veteran, first of all, if you're out there and you can, hire a veteran. They're going to make your workplace better. They're going to make your neighborhoods better. They're going to make your high schools better when they bring their kids. So that's my public service announcement. Veterans have gone through a lot, and I have a little picture, and I carry around it's a ball that's made from rubber bands. And Dorian, the executive assistant for me for a number of years at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, when something would come in a rubber band, she just wrap it on the ball. So it's about the size of a baseball.
Okay.
Think about that's possibly a great description for what a veteran is. So inside there's a diamond, but we got to undo each of those strings that's so tight, right? And so when they come to jiu-jitsu, and they get going into the instruction that day, we're taking the rubber band off little by little. They have connection with people around them. They're not sitting in their basement or their mom's basement. Their two best friends aren't Jack Daniels and Glock. Instead, and also they have a schedule, and they're used to that. They're used to, if I'm late for formation, I'm in trouble. And if I'm not in the right uniform, I'm in trouble. And if I'm not paying attention to detail, I'm in trouble. So jiu-jitsu and all these kind of connecting activities, in the beginning, it just organizes what I call their dance steps of their life. And then when they get on the mat, that's the secret sauce that everything else that bothers them in life, they can't think about. They won't. Very rarely, I mean, almost never have I seen someone staring at the ceiling and ask me saying, you know, what's wrong? Well, I've got a lot of issues in my life, and I was thinking about them. At that moment.
Yeah.
And then because that brotherhood and sisterhood that naturally occurs in sport and naturally occurs in jiu-jitsu for sure, then they look forward. It's the highlight of their entire week. And they say it every time. This is what I look forward to. I know I'm going to see these guys. I know I'm going to learn something. I know I'm going to work hard or get my butt beat, and I don't mind. But I also know that it gives me something to look forward to, if not even to live for.
It feels, we were talking pre-show, that when I put myself in those shoes and just have I put my brain around getting out of the military and being disconnected from this big, basically brotherhood, this big system that was already put in place where you had people around you, you probably had someone to talk to. If something was going on, you at least had someone right beside you that's probably going through the same similar thing too. It feels like you're just pulled a plug and you're just disconnected from that world entirely. And to your point on jiu-jitsu that way, it checks a lot of boxes, and people coming in can, hey, I'm going to try to get better at something. That's why, I mean, I tell our young kids the same way. I don't care if it's guitar or if it's jiu-jitsu or something. Like, you need something to keep pushing towards and feeling progress. People want to feel productive too. So I feel that that's another box that, for a veteran aspect coming out of there as well. Just the sense of community in general, though, I think is just huge. And, you know, or a competitive aspect too. How do you, when it comes to like Army Combatives and things like that, do you recommend that a lot for veterans as well, like competition, things like that?
Sure. For those that have become veterans, to get involved, but also, accept risk, acknowledge. All you have to do is run a marathon and have a 55-year-old woman run past you. You know, you're like, okay,
yes,
all right. That tells you everything about ego. It's like,
yep,
I'm going to be as good as I can be.
Yes.
When you compete, whether it's at the Arnold's here in town or it's one of the local competitions, or you find your way up the chain compete. You know, that's where you get to see how much you've grown, and the fact that someone beats you and you're standing on stoop 2 or 3, or you're not at all. That's none of your business if that guy's a world-class talented athlete. And what is your business is, what did you learn from that world-class talented athlete, because you competed, and then grow and take it to the mats and come back and ask somebody, he did this or she did this. And then at the tournament, this sergeant female got armbarred, and I said, well, how do you defend? She said, I don't know. And I said, okay, move up, in the practice mats, move over here. I'm going to show you three escapes, because you're not going to get armbarred again this week. And so that's the reason to compete, is go beyond your comfort zone and learn. And then someday you'll be standing on the top block with a little gold thing around your neck, and someone will be relying on you to pass it on. What I think we can do more in telling them how we learned through success, near success, and not success, than actually teaching them how to win.
That's wow. A very similar point when competition, what you were making earlier, with having to crank. Then I'm talking for someone who is active, that's learning the techniques on jiu-jitsu. The competitive setting for jiu-jitsu, it's the closest we could probably make to being without it being some kind of other fight, or being an actual fight, not a competition. Right. So I highly recommend to everybody, and for the same reason sometimes too, to kind of blend those with the two topics we were talking about, with not only active Army Combatives and also veterans doing jiu-jitsu after they come out of the service. I still feel keeping that mental that mental edge, that mental toughness that way too. And I feel that someone who's probably done tours or has been trained that way will still like to keep that little bit of edge on them too, you know. And I think jiu-jitsu is a very big avenue for that too, of keeping that sharpness too. And it's things that make us go to bed and eat right and
Yes.
go to practice, and
Yes,
and then it
exactly.
becomes a purpose. And then you see what I'm saying, like of someone who's normally did have a purpose of like, I got to go do this, and then I got to go PT, and then it checks a lot of boxes that way. So I guess just to keep moving on, what was one of the big ones as you were going through your journey too? I guess I'll start with, it's a very broad question, sir, but I'll start with jiu-jitsu on this. You've told me a couple of them, but who were a couple of the key figures that you had during your jiu-jitsu journey that really, moments that would stand out to you, sir?
Yeah, I go immediately, to three guys: Matt Larson, Troy Thomas, and Tahone Nicholson. And very fortunate to, Matt has his PhD in jiu-jitsu, in combatives, in psychology, and just the thoughtfulness of the human, and then the need to be ready to either defend or protect your tribe and your herd and your family, and then how he translates that into the practicality, as you did too, in terms of the balance of training, rolling, flowing, technique, and competing. And then Troy was one of my go-to guys in the Army, and he was Staff Sergeant Troy Thomas when I met him. Sent him to officer school. He was Lieutenant Captain Thomas. I visited him in Iraq, in Diyala River Valley. And then when I was selected to command as a 2-star at Fort Benning, Georgia, people love it when they get a call from me. It's like, Troy, what are you up to? He's like, oh, you're about to tell me I'm coming to work for you, kind of thing. It's the gym next door. It's just going to be that way. They're throwing a ball against the wall.
Something at the wall, yeah.
But so Troy, just he could translate the levels of the Army from how a private thinks to how NCOs think to how officers, and then senior officers, as he achieved that. And then Sergeant Nick was just my personal security detachment, a total enigma, Golden Gloves boxer coming out of New York. And literally, you mentioned Bruce Lee. Sergeant Nick might start wrestling someone, and he's 5'11", 162.
Okay.
And by the time he's finished, his back is about this wide, and his chest is like this. And so I'm like, how did you become a 210 pounds? He's just fantastic and smooth and so good in so many ways. So those are the guys, and that covered a 1999 period where I first met Troy and Matt Larson, to a 2007 time period when I met Nick, and then the next 10 years, and then the next 10 years. And so those three, and then along the way, just you getting to see someone who's had that curious nature and that desire. There's either someone that wants to grab you, a typical leader, I want to show you, or someone says, if you don't mind, these are my men, sir. If you have no more questions, I'm going to take them over here and train. And so there's these two personalities that you can't put a name to, but that is part of the journey as well, to know that this one is going to train his people, and this one is training because he's telling you every day that he is.
Inside of the jiu-jitsu community, there's so many similarities that we were talking pre-show about, just some of the similarities on sports and the military and leadership. So that was one of the big things that I wanted to discuss with you, is some of those qualities that you see from jiu-jitsu instructors, because we are commanding our people in certain ways.
Yep.
We're leaders to, the little 8-year-old kid that comes to my class or things like that too. And so you're wanting to model some of the things that exactly what you're talking about, sir, about having a curiosity for change, about having no ego to hey, people are better. There are levels to these things too. I'm sure you've gotten on the mats with a lot of people that you're like, that guy is scary if he wants to be, and when you get in some of these situations, you realize really quickly, like, that ego. I'm sure that way more than I have. To use Tim Kennedy's quote, he would say, when I was in the Army, I'd have someone with a sniper rifle pointed to my head. Inside the cage, if something goes bad, there's a referee there. He'll stop it, And so to put that in perspective, like, wow, like, it seems very small, this cage fight that I'm really worried about, in the grand scheme of things to it. And I think that seeing some of those types of battles and seeing some of the qualities that come out of those, about being kind of shaped by these, battles that we have on the mats, or the conversations that we have too, because jiu-jitsu shapes so many people that they kind of come together, that like attracts like type thing too. I got a chance to talk to Robin at a wedding that we went to with our friend Hannah, that's a black belt as well. Okay. And I got to sit down and talk to Robin for a little bit. And boy, we just because we have very, very similar interests when you get us going on things. And people, when they get talking about, with me, it's always about the teaching and coaching. That's really my big passion, I believe. Teaching jiu-jitsu is one of my favorite things in the world to do. I'm also a strength coach as well. And when people want to listen and they're engaged, I'm like, cool, how do I do better? How do I make myself better for you to learn, so that we get better results out of it too. I guess so that flows into my next question too, just on leaders as well. Can you speak to any leaders that you might think of as well that you think has shaped you along your journey, sir?
Sure. And I would say whether you're coaching, teaching, or whether you're a leader in your community or a leader in the military, they don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? And so when they walk in the door and the culture is, they really care that you came in. I'm glad you came in. And if someone's late, I thank them for coming, not tell them they were late. And so some of the great leaders, General Martin Dempsey and Carter Ham, for sure. First Sergeant Daryl Enfinger was my first sergeant in Alaska in 1985, or still today. I was with him a week ago. All the time, Bobby Tuck and Bobby Cinco. If I had to pick, a two-man team to go to combat, Cinco's the guy. If I had to pick a five-man team, Sergeant Nick's on that team, Troy's on that team as well. And then Sergeant Major Chris Hardy. In each case, it was someone who was really super good at what they did, but they didn't spend a lot of time worrying about the fact that they were really good, because they knew that there was someone whose lives depended on that, and being able to make a correction on someone while handing a cup of self-esteem to them, those are the leaders that touched me the most. So, and you could tell someone, I have shown you that, every Monday for the last 5 weeks, or be, hey, I really think you're not going to get smashed if you just do what I'm telling you right now. And then one day they come back, or like Nate this week, saying, you just pushed it forward, and all of a sudden you changed my world. So I think that show you care, be a good listener, and then hand a cup of self-esteem every class to as many people as possible, and you're changing their life.
It's some of the common traits that I think that I would say too, as you were saying them. I don't know any of those gentlemen, but I'm assuming they share common traits to the things that your values are, obviously, that you see in leaders, some of these qualities. And I number one that I would think of is probably honesty. Like, what would you think in there? Some of the leader qualities that you see. I think that's number one for me. It's like when because I can trust that person. I trust their words, and I trust them because they seem genuine.
Honesty can be painful, and and you want that. We're fortunate in the Army to have a platoon sergeant, and then you get promoted, you get a first sergeant, you get promoted, you get a sergeant major. And often they are the one that's going to close the door and say, sir, you're kind of getting worked up about such and such, but let me be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And often our language is amazing, because when someone says, let me be honest with you, they're about to be honest with you, right? And but without that, you lose respect and trust immediately. And without respect and trust, the relationship is 100% transactional. And, those guys are, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is negotiable. And rather than together, everyone accomplishes more. When you have honesty and trust, then, and when I teach, I like to give about a 15-second between, transition, and I hear the chatter in the infield, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of team and peer teaching going on, and discussion and what just happened and all that, and whether we rotate people one or rotate the position or move on to another piece of instruction or free roll. I love to hear. I call my classes rainbow classes, because we have every color, white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And I'm A-okay, or maybe my ego is A-okay, that someone's actually teaching beyond the moment, because that kid's going to get better because of the person he's with. And then the team gets better, and then the culture inside gets better. So to me, and it starts with this honesty of, and sometimes I love to teach.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I'll be told, you taught the entire time period. You never gave them any chance to fly,
it's a problem I've had. Yeah. Rich, you know what I'm saying?
Knows, 'cause he's been
it's
there.
A problem I had to have. It's like, because, and you just gave me an example of how you don't have an ego in there too. You said if there's other colored belts in there and your brown belt has something, it's like, yeah, you should listen to him. He probably knows what he's talking about. He's brown belt, and that's a healthy ego as an instructor. Like, we don't know everything. Right. And it's like, obviously there's levels to respectfulness of teaching we do in jiu-jitsu, but I mean, if I have my upper belts in there and I'm like, hey, my guy Brian, my brown belt, he does this choke really well and he does a couple of the details better. I tell people, like, there's a reason why, like, certain adages, like, listen to your elders and stuff like that.
Yes.
Not always true completely, but I mean, they're telling you that they have wisdom, which is inevitably true when you get older, right? You gather some wisdom in you, and hey, you should. And even though, like, I always joke that Rich ain't showing flying triangles, but like, he will show you some really good escapes, and he'll show you some really good half guard work in the things he plays, the jiu-jitsu he plays too. General, to start wrapping it up here too, I'm going to send it over to you to any advice that you might have for a veteran listening to, because that's the other thing I wanted to do to find value out of this conversation is, how do you think a veteran could get involved, like, more with a jiu-jitsu academy, or what's that mindset look like for them?
I was talking to a kid who's reached out to me. I never met him, and when I finally got him on the phone, I said, so Conley, tell me, where did I meet you before? He said, sir, I just looked you up and reached out. I thought, well, okay. And I asked him, are you doing jiu-jitsu? He said, well, I did Army Combatives, and I did jiu-jitsu growing up, but no, there's nothing near here. And I said, well, where do you live? He told me, and while I was speaking to him, I just Googled jiu-jitsu in that town. I said, there are 8 places. So first, just Google Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then walk in and say, I want to learn this. I want this to be part of my life. I have to admit, I don't know much about it. So my first thing to learn is something about it, but I'm willing to. So that's step one. Step two is, be willing to do your best, not be the best. Do your best and improve daily. And then also, the day you go in there, you probably made that jiu-jitsu academy better, because you're bringing in the traits that you learned from the great leaders above you, from your parents and your coaches growing up. So you may not know all the moves, but you're still someone who's been around the world and back again. So I would say that. And then there are a lot of people who want to and can help you, and so speak up if you need help. Don't A lot of sergeant majors say don't suffer in silence. So if you're out there and things just aren't falling in place, that's good, right? You've been through tough things before, and your transition is different. The only time if you transition out of the military, the only thing similar to that was transitioning into the military, and you proved you could do that. And so now, take it one step at a time, and you're going to be okay. And then finally, I would say, as a wrap up, if now's the right time, but
Yes, sir.
it's Saturday where we are. 1800 on Friday, 1800 on Saturday. Text somebody and say, "Buddy, check." Question mark. The person you reach out to, you may save their life that night. You may just reconnect with them, and they're like, "God, I haven't heard from you since we were in basic or brag or overseas," and then you'll rekindle a relationship, or you may do something that really helps in a serious way. So, because you can, and because it's natural for you out there as a veteran, and if you're not a veteran, on Fridays, text someone and say, "Buddy, check." And normally, if you don't have anyone to do a buddy check with, do it with one of your brothers and sisters, because you're probably in some knucklehead fight with one of them anyways. So be brave enough to build a bridge back, and despite whatever drives you crazy about family members.
That's excellent advice, sir. Thank you. And I think that goes even beyond veterans to anybody, that it's not a manly thing to sit there and suffer inside of your own head. And I think that's, again, some of the things we were talking about with jiu-jitsu, having a mindset to ask questions. If there's a problem, how do I get help? How do I get help with that choke that you were, talking about, that gentleman, or in this case, something far more serious, How do I get help with something that's going on in my head that I, can't come to terms with, or whatever that may be too. So, as much as I want to push, the jiu-jitsu side of things on pretty much everybody that wants to listen to me, pretty much, you got kids, you got grandpa, cool, let's learn about jiu-jitsu. But I do genuinely believe that it can be a help to people who are suffering, or at a minimum, just open them up to a community that is, in most every case I've seen, is willing to open up their arms and be like, "Yeah, come on the mats, man."
Yeah, wherever you are in your journey, we all have different acronyms and all, but if you defend, escape, elevate, and dominate, and that can be life, you're gonna have tough times. So defend. That's the best part of jiu-jitsu. That's why it was designed the way it was. And then escape from the problem, and then elevate and get in a position so you can dominate. And so be
Excellent.
Be tough indeed.
Excellent. Well, General, thank you very much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this entire conversation, sir. I've been excited the whole week about this, and thank you. Thank you very much,
pleasure.
sir.
All right.
So, thank you. And any other words that you'd want to say before we wrap up, sir?
Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. Rich, thanks for inviting me and making this connection. Relationships are for life, and when we make them, then make something of them, is what I would say there. And then can't wait to get to Findlay and get on the mats.
Thank you. You're very much invited too, sir. Very much. Thank you again to Gracie, Ohio, and Robin Geisler. Thank you again to our friend Rich over here. And thank you to Lieutenant General Michael Ferriter for coming in to talk with us today too. So thank you very much, guys. Tune in next month for our next guest. And in the meantime too, if you guys have any comments or have any questions as well, or as Lieutenant General Ferriter said, reach out to look for jiu-jitsu in your area. Or anybody who's looking for help too, call somebody. And I really love your idea of texting someone on Friday. I'm gonna start doing that too. Great. I'm not a veteran, but it's like things that need to be said be said. So
there's a thing, whether this, you can cut it, it doesn't matter later, but MVP is merging veterans with players, because out on the West Coast, Nate Boyer discovered that leaving military as a special forces soldier, sergeant, and leaving professional football that he played for a brief period, or college football that he played at University of Texas, that that same loneliness, that same vacancy in their heart, that same. So there are police officers who retire, first responders who finish up, people who just leave college and they think they're going to take the world on. Suddenly there's that gap. So reach out, find the person that you can help, and make life better for them.
And what was the website for that one
It's
too?
MVP, Merging Veterans and Players.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's Nate Boyer. Tim Kennedy helps him out. The guy from Fox Sports, Jay Glazer.
Glazer, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it's a really good thing, and they'll do a nationwide CrossFitter workout. So you could be in your living room doing it, or you can go to a place where they have MVP, and you're probably going to get a really good workout, but you're also going to sit on the mats and chat with a peer
And connect.
about things.
Yeah. And connect yourself too, guys. I guess that's the biggest thing from look up someone in your area. Someone is there. There are support systems. There are resources as well. So again, I want to keep that in too, because I think it's very, valuable as well. So thank you again, General. And thank you guys for listening as well. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.